brain.
Hello is what I think I just said. Hey everybody, it's Dwight, your host and friend and companion for this episode of The Broken Brain. This is our episode about Wakanda Forever. There's a legal requirement of all podcasts to talk about certain movies when they come out, and that is no exception on ours. We embrace it willingly and happily. And so I am really grateful to be joined today by Darryl Mansel, who is the proprietor and head and founder of the Paprika Network on Facebook, or fandom and moviedom and all kinds of dumb, except it's not dumb because it's cool. Also joined by Sharon Blady, who is the former health minister of Manitoba in Canada, and also our resident expert and guest to come on to talk about all things superheroed. Both of these people are very familiar to anyone who's listened to the show before. Having Darryl and Sharon's been on all kinds of times. So Black Panther 2, which is what I always keep calling the movie that's really called Wakanda Forever. It's not Black Panther 2, right? It's Wakanda Forever. That's the name of the movie.
It is Wakanda Forever, although I do believe Wikipedia will auto-complete for you. So hit Black Panther 2 and they'll redirect it where you need to be.
Yeah, we all know what it is, but still. Right. Gotcha. Wow.
For brevity's sake.
I got to say, this is one of those that I was excited for having come out. Not surprisingly, anyone listening is like, he was looking forward to this. I was real excited. And, we're gonna get into some of the emotional, psychological aspects of the story and the characters, but I'll just say up front, I thought it was cool. I really liked it a lot. It was one of those movies that you go in saying, I hope this is good, and it was good. That's very straightforward. I like that kind of transaction.
Yeah. I same here. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was one that had a lot more, I think you'd say, a little more investment up front in light of the broader circumstance with the passing of Chadwick. So you had something that was, I know my expectations were like in two camps, like one is a Marvel piece and the extension of that story, but then also how we all process our grief. And how they process the collective grief, and they do it up to the right standard, or sufficiently for those of us in the audience.
That moment of silence that happened during the Marvel credits, and then when they put Wilson's picture into every letter of the Marvel thing and everything, especially now that we've been socially trained to look carefully at every picture on there to see if Moon Knight's in there, or to see, did they put Miss Marvel in there? Oh, this is a movie one and she's in, whatever. But to have him fill up that whole thing and then to have that moment of silence, I felt like that was pretty cool, especially because they mirrored that moment of silence at the end with Siri taking a moment to think about her brother. It actually went black screen, right? I mean, there was no image for a minute, which I thought that was pretty daring on both sides and pretty respectful in my opinion.
Yeah, they did something similar with Stan on his passing. They put his picture, but they still had, if I remember correctly, the Marvel fanfare going behind it. And this, with, like you said, with no music, it started out weighty.
Yeah. And one of the things that it gets right into then is the character that wasn't on screen, of course, right? Which we can't be, obviously. And I know that there's been all kinds of chatter, and I don't make movies. I don't know. Is it better to recast or not recast? And in this case, their decision, and I think a lot of people stand behind this decision, which is, at least at this point, we are not recasting. We're going to go ahead and of all like the strange memories for that to tickle out of me was Sesame Street. Now, you guys, I don't know if y'all remember, in Sesame Street, the Hooper's store is still there, I think, if they're still making Sesame Street or whatever. But Mr. Hooper died, right? The actor who played Mr. Hooper early on in the series when I was a kid died, and they had an episode where Big Bird had to talk to all the other adults in the show about how the character died, and it was like this grief that was felt, and it was, you know, to help little kids to deal with it, obviously, too. It was meant to teach. And for some reason, that just clicked in with me, of the daring move that was back at that time, to say, we're going to go ahead and deal with the death on screen, because we all cared for this person, even we didn't know him, because that's the nature of, you know, a popular character. Anyway, it just hit me. That memory popped up while I was thinking about it the other day.
Yeah, I remember that very, very vaguely. And I remember really applauding Sesame Street for how do I put this? For trusting kids to have the emotional capacity to be able to understand what's going on, and to not just, they're not going to notice, or glad right over it, or we'll just throw another guy in there. Like they trusted the kids to know what was going on, and to you know, grapple with you know, a loss.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that was part of it as well, too, because I know that there was this idea of, well, you know, you recast it, and it was like, no, this is about, you know, we've all seen other situations where something happens, and, you know, either somebody gets recast even before, you know, something comes out. There's just, you know, there's a variety of approaches. This is not, you know, on one level, it's not unusual where something can happen, you know, mid-production, you know, pre-production, you know, while something's in the work. But this was about the fact that, in my mind anyways, like, it wasn't just about, here's a lead actor within this franchise, in this thing, and now what do we do, and how do we transition? It was like, this was somebody who was so, his role and his portrayal of that character and everything that it and then the larger, you know, world that is Wakanda stands for, was just too significant to just, you know, and like you say, like with the Sesame Street thing, the idea of, you know, give the audience credit, let everybody mourn, and that it also, to me, there was the added brilliance of, in some respects, the storyline was, I mean, it was clearly had to be transformed, but it was not just transformed, but it was informed. So you see how Shuri is talking about not being able to save her brother, but then how dare he not tell her until the last minute, because how could she not find a cure? So you see that there were so many different ways where actors, through their roles, were in a sense being able to grieve, you know, not just here's my character grieving T'Challa, it's also me grieving Chadwick. And that, I think that was really brilliant, because it was this use of a truth that we knew that was out there, and it wasn't in any kind of weird artificial, like, shoehorning it in. It was very natural and organic, and actually allowed the story to unfold and had implications for other parts of the story. So, it allowed us to collectively, in the theater, go through that grieving process.
And it's interesting too, because we're used to them using things like, oh, hey, wait, that bit character is a named character. I think I remember that. Let me Google search that. Or here's a premonition of what's to come. Or the storytelling where they use a lot of the Marvel universe in the comics, they bring in a lot of stuff. Let's stick, you know, Frog Thor and Loki or whatever. They do all that kind of stuff. But what we're talking now is a weighty, emotional moment, but it's drawn from real life. It's not from some obscure comic over here. It's like, she was the audience member who's sitting there going like, I didn't know he was sick till he died. And she's saying that on screen for us. Right. And I think people who don't get it, maybe they just don't get what I don't know, just what in some way, like what a meaningful film Black Panther was, and what meaningful role that was to have that come out, right? You know what I'm saying?
I see a large group of people that I've seen who were big fans of the recast T'Challa movement seem to be more just MCU fans than anything else, that don't fully understand just the impact that Chadwick had on Hollywood, and the fact that he played numerous Black icons in his days, and and gives us that last really powerful performance with the Five Bloods and with Ma Rainey. So it was in some instances, it's like, the character is more than the actor, but then this is one of those times where the actor and his overall impact on Black culture needed to be fully respected.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that I was thinking of in regards to this movie ties right in with the grief part, the grief and pain. One of the themes I saw that kept popping up was how pain takes us to a place of anger and how that causes us to lash out. Now, if I'm going to do this in like therapy terms, right, that becomes a behavioral feedback loop. Okay. So we get in some pain, we get angry, we change our behavior because of anger one way or another. And let's just say lash out in a superhero world is a little more dramatic maybe than when we just don't call our sibling for a while or something because we're mad at them. It's like, oh, I trashed a continent. Sorry, guys. I was mad. And then when we lash out, what happens is that actually reinforces the anger we originally had, because I'll go and, I'll go take it out on this person. Then they'll take it out on me or someone I love. And then I'll get angry again, or I'll still be angry after this or whatever. And it kind of fuels us back into that. And I felt that pattern in so many, I would say almost all the characters at one point or another are struggling with that. Their pain is causing them to lash out, even at each other at times, right? And I was curious what y'all, thought about that as you were seeing the story unfold.
Go for it, Sharon. If you want to start first.
There were layers there, because it was, so you had that mourning process, the anger, and to watch, his mother say, like, what more can I give? Like, this is, you take like my family, this, like, just, and trying to be, this combination of, I have got to be a benevolent leader, but I am a grieving, pissed off widow mom, like just,
Yeah.
So, Angela Bassett just rocked it. And then to watch, again, and Shuri, this is that thing. And I've often used in my own program, I talk about the relationship with T'Challa and Shuri as we saw it first played out, as about that idea of when you're a superhero, your embedded sidekick is your neuroplasticity, and that we've got, those two are close, but we got something closer, and her role and the tech and this kind of stuff that you couldn't have T'Challa without Shuri, that they just feed off each other, and that they've got that little, like, if anybody knows how to finish the other person's sentence, it's those two, and and it leads to the comment about, like, I call them sneakers, and other little, like, those little, like,
what are those? One of my favorite lines from the first movie.
Yeah. And so these kinds of things that are going on there, and then to see her just be so like, what does it matter that I have this lab, this technology, this intelligence, if I cannot keep my brother alive? What, like, what is the point? And so to see that anger and frustration, like, why am I doing this? To watch others, again, where there's that whole void, that was the part that was interesting, was that both T'Challa and Chadwick were both, in a sense, ever present, even though they weren't in the movie. Like, they were, I cannot think of a scene where you didn't, where in a sense they weren't present. He wasn't present, because it was everything from even seeing Namor's, even Namor's anger, and seeing that idea of two different, again, metaphors for colonization being represented, and seeing how they came to it. So no, it was just the grief that was there was just pervasive. His peers, even peers that he had been competitive with, and watching their dynamics change, and watching other folks step in and going, yes, I'm grieving, but I see somebody's grieving more than me, and they need this. And so that they don't go down the wrong path, I'm going to step in with, the positive emotional supports and negotiate these things, and just seeing, like, a lot of really painful, raw emotion. And like you say, that so many places where you're like, ooh, here's a decision tree moment, this way or this way. Where's somebody going to go? And wondering.
I saw in the preview when they show Angela Bassett saying that line about I've lost everything. I don't know if it was on purpose, but it made it sure look like she was saying that to the United Nations, to me. And so when we see that she's actually saying it to Okoye, in that to me was one of the most emotional trigger points of the whole movie, was when she's begging her, please forgive me, and she's saying, no, I'm not, which is bad. It is not a good behavior. It is not. I'm a ruler with all this, and I'm going to turn to this loyal person who's literally calling me her mother and begging for my love, and I'm going to say nope. But that's pain, right? I mean, that's hurt. I am spent. I am done. I am done being mature for this moment. And you know what? I am angry at you. You let me down. And I told you not to, and you did it anyway, and you're out of here.
That's the beg and plead all you want. Mom is still grounding your butt. You've lost the follow, you've lost all your tech privileges, and your butt and a book is about all the interaction you're getting in the next little while. Kiss the internet goodbye.
It's and you need foibles like that, because that's what gives all those characters 3 dimensions and depth. If Raimundo was just like, well, these things happen, let's keep at it, then you would have lost that side of what was quickly becoming a multifaceted character. It's interesting seeing them make those mistakes via grief, via pain, via fear, that just continues to flourish the development of these people, making them more real.
Well, and I even see the turn that happened with Shuri, because you saw that her engagement with Namor, and you sit there and you see these things, and you're seeing this her introduction to this world, and you're wondering what kind of positive thing is going to happen, and that his own, especially as the story unfolds and you get that, those little snippets of backstory, and you're like, oh, dude's got a whole bunch of chips on his shoulder, rightfully so, raging ball of unhealed trauma here. And he's tapping into hers. And instead of this warm fuzzy, what can these 2 awesome places do together? He sucks her down a hole for a while. And she's just like, screw the lot of them. The rest of the world sucks. And you get it. So let's go.
Which is also one of the great powerful things about the first Black Panther movie was the antagonist's message was actually true, but the protagonist disagreed with his methodology of how he was going to resolve it. That was a bold choice to have a morally complex bad guy, which of course, I want to get your guys' feelings on Killmonger's appearance in this movie. Oh, by the way, spoilers. I should have said that at the beginning. There will be spoilers for this. Just like the one I just said. But to have that, and then to say once again in this one, you have, when there's that mentality, you see them cruising together, and there's this kind of almost a chemistry and a spark between them. If not romantic, at least there's this deep understanding that they can have for each other when they're cruising around the underwater kingdom. And then it's undermined by this pervasive anger and this, but getting back to the idea that the rest of the world kind of does suck. One of the things I also enjoyed is the depiction of the USA. If they're standing in for the first world of, I shouldn't say first world, these are all first world nations if you want to put them in a socioeconomic, I guess. But what I mean is, here's let's just say the colonizers, the government, and they've been left, they're not important for this story except that they are inserting themselves. I thought that was a huge strength. We got these 2 nations, neither of them is the United States, and the United States is like, hey, what? Hey, can we get it? Get in it. Well, we just want to steal from you. Come on, we just want to come steal, And I thought that was quite well done.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I thought we wouldn't get that, which I was surprised at, especially in the beginning when you see that France was the one doing some shady stuff there at the beginning. And I was like, they're going to go the France route, but good old USA never lets you down. And of course, they're trying to do some shadiness all in the background. I have some issues with that part of the story by itself, but still, it's the USA is going to stick their long noses in wherever they get the chance.
Well, and what I thought was interesting was that by having the nod to France, it was sort of one of those things, and I guess maybe read other things into it with Friedman being British, and then so there was like they're getting both the Anglo and the French colonizers in there. Okay, we're not going to go dip down into like Portuguese and whatnot, but we're going to hit, the top couple of
Sure.
global colonizers, and just kind of the nod. And then the fact too, that they did the reference with Ross and Val having been like ex-spouses. So you're like, oh, so there's extra layers. So in other words, it's not just two entities, that it became this metaphor for, these two are literally, bedfellows, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it was like, it was an interesting thing. Now, no, maybe that's like the years as a decolonization scholar that, caused me to read stuff into it. But I mean, yes, I totally agree that it's not like the portrayal of the larger, again, global and colonial situation is, perfect and unproblematic within both of them. But that, again, when you're thinking about the fact that, oh heavens, like 2 Marvel movies have done this better than some other movies that were actually intended to address these issues. And you know what? I'll give them some wiggle room as they, adapt in these other metaphors and give us superheroes, whereas other folks that supposedly had like a, historical expert on staff and blah, 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 have totally, stuck their foot in it. You know what? I can live with the wiggle room.
It's interesting how it carries through. I hadn't thought about this till you were just saying that if we want to break a behavioral like feedback loop, like I said, we have to do something opposite to what the emotion's telling us to do. We're in pain, we're angry, we got to do something different to lead to a different, result. Anyway, there's a legacy there that T'Challa started at the end of the first movie, right? Where he looks and says, Killmonger's right. We've been hiding and we're going to come out hiding and we're going to do some stuff. But from him, he's like, we're going to help. We're going to heal. We're not going to hurt. We're not going to, that type of an approach. He just basically varies up how to do it. And as you're talking, I was thinking about, both of you were talking, I'm thinking about how that applies to Shuri's ultimate direction, right? Of like, she's angry and she's completely justified as the leader of this nation, as the Black Panther, as a Marvel hero to say, I'm going to take this guy out. This guy needs to go. And, none of us would necessarily say, oh, well, that's wrong. It's like, well, no, I mean, there's a betrayal. He killed her mom, all this stuff, and he's going to do some more shady, bad, or at least bad stuff. But yet she, in the end, goes against that to say, I'm going to do what I think is actually better for the greater good of our nations and not kill him, which be kind of hard.
Yeah.
Although it was kind of hard to kill him too, but she was going to do it.
I think she got there. It's one of those, like, if I kill him, I become just as bad a person as he is, which is one of my favorite tropes in all of fiction is in trying to rid the world of the evil, you become the evil. I love when that is well done. And I think that, that breaks that cycle that you're talking about. There is that decision not to lash out and kill, that for that rational moment, the higher functions in the brain took over and realized that, if I take out this, not a world leader, because the world doesn't know this guy exists, but basically a leader of a civilization, this could lead to all out war. And that's something that world leaders supposedly want to, not have happen at all possible cost. That diplomacy that's what diplomacy is there for, right?
Well, too, and the fact that you saw again in the first movie what T'Challa did with the whole, you've had Killmonger's, approach, which was like, I was all for like, please repatriate all the things in the museum. Okay, maybe with a little less bloodshed, but you know what? Have at her. Take that stuff home. Go for it. Yeah. I mean, and again, I come from a background in, again, museum studies as well. So the notion of somebody calling out, I mean, a curator like that as they take this stuff, well, actually, that piece isn't what you think it is. I've done that a few times in a couple of museums and things like that's actually what you think it is. But okay, whatever. That's the little So to see that, to see what he was completely well-founded in his beliefs and calling T'Challa on that, made it opened up his eyes to these things, and the fact that you saw. Things from, you start to see things from a different perspective was wonderful. But then he does, again, the healthier thing and says, yes, we're going to share this stuff, But then, fast forward through these different things, and now we're at this movie, and you're like, oh, and so what kind of stuff has happened since like Wakanda revealed themselves to the world? Oh my God, every crap thing that happens in the universe,
Yeah.
converges, all of the garbage, everything. Like, wait a minute, like you didn't know who we were. And then all of a sudden we open our doors and the battlefield comes to our front yard. Oh, way to go. Thanks. And then, leads to truth. So when you see again, it's like, oh, there's this whole other place, but it's the underwater equivalent. And again, thinking of how they got there in the background, you're like, yeah, kind of like Killmonger, not really a villain, but an anti-hero. Again, like a Magneto as well, where it's the screwed over enough times that I'm just a little cynical and cautious. And, my thinking might not be healthy, but I'm at least, the rose-colored glasses are off. And if anything, you're going to stab yourself on the shattered shards. And that's a you problem, not mine. And so that was the part that was interesting there as well. And to watch how Shuri came so close to, and well, even the idea too, that idea of like, every character being able to mourn both personally and as an actor, the idea that Killmonger was there and that's the person that she saw was, to me, that was brilliant, because that's the place that she was in. That when when you go down that path, in some respects, turns out you end up, your version or your vision of it is grounded in, well, where are you at right now?
Yeah, I can't remember if I said it in my review or not, but this one movie did what these Star Wars prequels couldn't really quite do in 3. Shuri had a great fall to the dark side with a very convincing, motivating factor. Very believably done there, and she does go to that dark place, and there's a little bit of time. It's a Marvel movie, so you kind of know where she's going to end up, but there's still that little like, what's going on? They did it well enough that there's a seat. It's
funny because they do once in a while they'll bust out with something where it's like, oh, that actually happened. So there's a party that's like, what is she going to do? But I know, I was with you. I believed she would. In that moment when she saw Killmonger, it was also just like we were saying with Queen Ramonda. She lashed out. And she lashed out in a way that she wouldn't usually have. She's going through that, and it kind of and they didn't back away from it. In fact, they had the guts to arrange a situation in which Okoye and her will never be able to resolve that between their relationship because she's gone. And that happens in real life. That's part of our pain, right? Is that you can't always resolve things. And so, they had the guts to do that. And so to have Shuri confront this part of her where Killmonger appears in her vision and is like, yeah, you're more like me than you are like him. Of course I'm going to show up, right? You and I have this in common. You've got this burning anger. You don't want to just lay back. Come on. It confirmed something about some of, like you said, there's that darkness of her personality somewhere in there. There's the darkness or the capacity to do what I guess you could say Killmonger would say what needs to be done, but maybe that's a very broad umbrella for him. Whereas I think you see where Shuri ultimately embraces the strength side of that, maybe the motivational side of that energy and anger to ultimately decide, okay, we're going to change course here. That's still a strength. And I don't know. That's so I don't. That was the big thing for me when Killmonger appears. And what did you think of that, Darryl? His presence in the movie?
That what needs to be done is generic enough that you can justify anything within that, I think. And that's how he gives himself, or in his thought process, that's what gives himself the room to maneuver or the culpability to do horrible things. Seeing him in there, it was, simultaneously surprising and not surprising. And it's that scene where I realized, oh, they're doing Star Wars better than Star Wars right now.
Thank you for putting it that way, because I agree. I just had like an aha moment. You're right. They did the whole dark side thing so much better.
And so much quicker, too.
Better, quicker. No annoying little 5-year-old.
That takes me back to so many lines in the Star Wars movies where I'm like, oh, that's going to be interesting to see what happens. And then the future came along and said, no, it's not. You'll never see it happen. Nothing will happen. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I did read that in your review, and I thought that was, or maybe I just saw you. I can't remember if it was in your review or you said it in the group, but either way, I thought that was a great insight.
Well, and to sort of, the Star Wars thing just made me think of the thing. Like, one of the things I have to say about both of the movies has been, they have been wonderful in their representation of strong women and of healthy masculinity. I that was one of the things that I loved about Black Panther. Initially going like, holy crap, this is the most feminist thing to come out of the MCU. To that point. And so it was like, okay, so first of all, we have representation that's been long missing, but oh my God, and they threw feminism in too. Holy crap. And all of these strong women where you realize that, again, T'Challa wouldn't be who he was were it not for the various women around him, and that it wasn't about seeing himself as above them. It's like, yes, oh God, I inherited the job description from dad, but it was here's the responsibility that I now bear. And what's my support structure? It's, yes, I do have male peers and advisors and friends and this and that, but my real support, my values, where I check in, where somebody's going to call me on my crap, it's the women that were around him, and whether they were there in a family relationship or in, again, their role in service to him and whatever it was,
No. And it's interesting. It's a great example of how when you control the world building, I hear people always say things like, well, that's just how it is, and when you control the world building, you don't have to have everybody be like, but she's a girl. They often choose to do that in storytelling because we think whatever our societal values are of every society, whether it's 800 years in the future or whether it's, on another planet or whether it's this, whatever. And again, to say it was powerful to not have to waste time with anybody being like, oh, wait, but can a girl be in charge? Or can it, it's just like, let's just
and again,
have a nation
things that
where we're not
Lucas and Tolkien did not do well. Yeah. I love my Star Wars. I love my Lord of the Rings, but like Tolkien and Lucas are not going to go down as, guys that were able to write strong female characters. And then that carried forward into this film as well, because you see, I think the other part too is, again, the healthy masculinity. And the character that I love the most in that regard was M'Baku. I mean, oh my God. I mean, every time I see Winston Duke, I just fall more and more in love with him but that character is so much a part of it, because again, he was supposedly the big scary guy. Oh yeah. And then you just realize, okay, dude's a teddy bear. Don't get me wrong. Like he will heave you across the room, and he is dangerous. But you see him and stepping in and trying to, again, fill that role, be the counter to what, she's hearing from Namor and Killmonger and other men that are not properly, that have got some stuff they got to sort out. And it was just like, oh my God. And especially too, fierce guys sitting there eating like the bright red carrot. And I mean, it's like one of those, like, I love the fact that carrots are multicolored, but it's like, you knew that was the stand-in for, oh, you're all expecting him to be on meat, but he's already said repeatedly that he's, vegetarian. Yeah. So it was just like that, but I'm no less tough with my carrot. I will, I will hurt you with this. This is also a weapon. But it was that healthy, there was a healthy dynamic there that as a woman that has dealt with, psychological, emotional, and physical abuse from men, including parents, partners, and other, like oh my God, healthy men exist. Okay, they might be a handful of characters in the MCU, but they're modeling that behavior where you're just like, okay, again, from a world building perspective, could we import some of these folks? Like, can we draw them out into the real world?
Yeah, and when you go, and it's interesting because that's also the one in the colonist zone. You got whenever they would cut back to Evil Veep and Dr. Watson. So he was taking risks, and by the way, along with the things that we'll have to see what happens in the upcoming projects, he now I think is a fugitive who is going to have to be living in Wakanda, I'm guessing. And I think M'Baku is now the king, is what it left me thinking. At least he showed up and said, hey, I think Shuri abdicated the throne to him. But I don't know that until we see what happens. So that's just more storytelling stuff.
Or that it's up for debate. I challenged for it, but wait a second until the person that I have to challenge comes by. Yeah, we're putting a hold on that.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. I don't know what the rules are.
I'm curious as to which way it goes. I mean, because it would be one of those things where he would have to, again, go through the process and become the Black Panther. But it's clearly no. I'm letting letting my girl go off. She's got to do what she's got to do. And again, from a healthy relationship, healthy masculinity, that again, spoiler alert part. Oh, look there's a Prince T'Challa, and it's what's going, and people doing the timeline thing, and you're like, oh, wait a second. Gee, it's toxic to raise a kid in an environment where the weight of being the future leader, may have some implications for their long-term mental health well-being. So no, what? Go off, live like normal people in another country. Yes, there were some other implications in terms of his loss, but it'll all be good. And by the way, look at, it created that place where it's like, oh, okay, so there's an heir there, but they get to grow up like a normal person. And
it's
less a few psychological issues. They get to bond with their auntie as well. And, and then she can go back and be a kick-ass superhero until I reach the age of majority, and then she can go back to being a nerd in the lab.
Yeah, it makes sense to me that if you were born into ruling, you get the opportunity, at least Toussaint will get the opportunity to appreciate the type of people that he is going to have to rule over. If you're born into it and you learn it from day one, then there's that potential for disconnect and aloofness that he won't experience as he just comes up from these types of your common man, and they learn to appreciate your common man, which will inform how you rule. I think from in world and out of the world, that is extremely smart,
especially when T'Challa had the experience of seeing how perhaps his own father was short-sighted, right? When he looks at that and he doesn't really care for how he took care of the situation with his brother. That's jarring to him. And so who knows, does that bring forth insights to say we need to be in touch with people?
And coupled with effectively Killmonger calling him out on the privilege that he had. And so it's the, again, the anti-hero providing a lesson, and it's like, okay, I can learn from that without going down the same toxic hole. I can do a thing. And it's okay, you know what? Again, I'm going to let my kid have a more normal life so that, when he's old enough to learn about the responsibilities of the leadership that he has, he, like you say, he's going to value the people that he leads in a completely different way without the disconnect.
One of the thoughts that I had was about the way people alter their trajectory with these kinds of things. If I'm consumed by anger, if I'm overwhelmed, if I'm trying to survive trauma, how do we comfort ourselves? And I was thinking about this in terms of how Shuri and her mother have this like competing in a way. They have whereas the Queen, she embraces this belief of spirituality. And by the way, I kind of feel like the MCU has sort of a low key. I have to be careful when I say low key. I'm not talking about the show. LOW space. Why? Anyway,
I don't remember any Norse gods in here. What?
What happened?
Was there an Easter egg that I missed?
They've sort of low key formed what I think is a very beautiful form of spirituality. If you look at Moon Knight, you look at the end of this last Thor movie, the end credits sequence. You look at in Black Panther, for example, the afterlife is formed around your beliefs and expectations of what the afterlife is going to be, right? And that there's these multiple gods and however that links together to say like, oh, well, you're going to inherit or be able to move on to the next stage of whatever you believe or are anticipating is there, which I think is a pretty cool idea. I haven't seen that replicated very many places. And so the Queen's embracing this spirituality. And for Shuri, her faith is more in like, well, I can do this. It's science, it's machines, it's electronics. It's like, and sometimes in those stories, it's hard to have a story like that where you don't shame either belief. right? And I feel like they kind of pulled it off. I know Shuri had to embrace the flower, and that leads to some of that and whatever. And if you go back to the comics, Shuri's relationship with the ancestors is complicated. They give her powers and things, but at the same time, she, has to go through times where she can't access them. But anyway, I guess I'm saying that, you have these dueling comforts, right? It's like, no, I'm looking over here. Well, I'm looking over here. I think you should embrace mine. I think you should embrace mine. And either one, even if they seem opposite, can change a course for someone if they embrace what makes sense to them, right?
Yeah. It's still to this day my favorite piece of property that has balanced it out delicately is Lost for me, because it really comes down to man of science, Jack, versus man of faith, John Locke, and how those two make the decisions that they make based off of their trust in the empirical versus their trust in what they can't believe in. And towards the end, there's a little bit of faith from Jack, and there's a little bit of science from the Locke character. When it is done well, which it is rarely done well, it's a beautiful thing to see. But here in Wakanda Forever, I think they do a good job of deftly handling the balance there.
And trying to not make it so much either or, right? There's a blending of that. And does Shuri walk away from her thing with Killmonger? At first, she walks away like that's a confirmation that nobody's there for me. There's no ancestors pulling for me. I didn't see T'Challa. I didn't see my father. I didn't see my mother. I think, right? Timeline. Yes. Okay. She could have been there, and that was disappointing to her. At the same time, she used what she learned from it, which I guess goes back to the whole idea of this pain response, right? Do I use it as something to learn from and move through, or do I stay there and build a house and now live in pain? And that's where I live. And I'm just going to act according to that. And you kind of see competing ways of dealing with it. Yeah.
It's a nice blend of science and faith, where the science got her the heart-shaped herb, and then she had to have the faith to enact on what she saw when she ingested the contents.
Exactly, that they had lost something that was associated with that. So it took science to get, for that scientific, for that spiritual experience to ever exist again, relied on the science. And so that idea that, it was part of the process. That if we were going to, if I'm going to achieve this, if the whole point of this is, yes, obviously these superhero abilities, because somebody's got to be the Black Panther, and we can't lose that legacy. So she was still tied to the tradition aspect of it, but I think she saw it much more in a pragmatic, and again, also part of that we've lost enough. We can't be losing this too. So what am I going to do to, if I can't cure my brother, well, I can at least do this. And that's, again, about maintaining the legacy and the traditions. But still, despite all of that, again, that logic, this, that, and whatever, that she would, okay, I'm still expecting to get to the ancestral planes, and it's supposed to be this warm, fuzzy experience. And what? I got what? Like I'm wounded enough as it is, and this is what you give me. It's like the second punch in the gut, as opposed to I'm going to go to some warm, fuzzy place, and someone's going to give me some, again, benevolent, sage advice that I can, that will heal me. And no, I get Killmonger. Oh, great.
Where's my cool ass purple field? I'm in this burnt room.
Exactly. Yeah. and so, I mean, she still took something, in the end, she ends up taking something positive from it. But yeah, like if you're expected to be greeted by, a long lost, a loved one that you've lost, and getting a big, warm, fuzzy hug, and you're like, really? This guy? Like, did I do wrong? That's somebody, that believes in the pearly gates going, smells like barbecue in here. I'm clearly in the wrong spot. It's too warm,
Oh man, if it smells like barbecue. Oh wait.
Well, yeah, but not in the good way.
Wait.
Oh God, Dad's burning the steak.
What's burning?
Kind of thing.
Yeah, gotcha.
But yeah, so like I said, I loved that as a metaphor, and that I think you're right. Like if it's done well, it's amazing, but it's like count on one hand.
It reminds me in a way of when we talk about all of these different things. When we talked about, I almost said WandaVision, but kind of WandaVision, but more so the Multiverse of Madness recently of the pain, when we were talking on the episode about that and how Wanda, from her point of view, is like, look, I saved the universe. I watched my true love get killed twice. Once I had to do it. And everything sucks. And I was pretty instrumental. I almost killed Thanos. I mean, she doesn't say any of this out loud. This is what I was saying in my head. When she does, and she's like, I have all this power. I can use it to get my kids. And all I have to do is like kill a person. I mean, I can do that, and it's like, now I say that, but and on the show, anyone who's listened to us talk about these before knows our attitude that Sharon and I have about what we call whoopsies. We all might get mad and make a scene, but we don't all have powers to say, I can cross, space and time and dimensions to find my lost children who I had to watch disappear in front of me. If I could, my whoopsies might be a little bit bigger. Right. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to kill the one person. Well, all of y'all in the way, I'll kill all you too. And, it just escalates. It's one of these things.
Yeah.
And you see that where at some point, though, it doesn't work. And in that movie, Wanda's getting what she wants almost. And then she realizes this is not what I want. Whereas then we see in this case, when people are getting close to what they want, it isn't always healthy. Right? I want to lash out. I want to hurt you. I did it. Ha. Oh, that wasn't great. And I think that is relatable to the world, the real world.
Yeah, I think Namor would have gotten there after a whole lot of death on the surface world, a whole lot of attacks on the surface world, and realizing that maybe I've gone too far, or these weren't even the people that did this thing that I'm mad about. Had he not been stopped, I think he would have ended up much like Wanda there towards the end of Multiverse of Madness.
Great point. Yeah, exactly. Because there is a sincerity inside his heart, right? Yeah.
Well, and this is that whole thing about the difference between whether you're supported or not in your grief and your trauma, right? And then, I mean, Wanda still sort of stands there as that pinnacle of this is what happens when you are literally left alone, and that all that ever happens is that people run interference on your grief-related behaviors, but they don't actually do anything to support you in your recovery and healing the grief and trauma. And so it just becomes like various forms of doubling down and escalation. Whereas you saw, oh, wait a second, this is what happens. And again, in both movies, we've seen places where it's like, oh, something's happened. Somebody could, oh, nope, gonna run interference. Something's gonna change. And that, again, Killmonger represents somebody that, basically his anger cost him his life. And then, I had great empathy for him. And again, still don't see him as a villain. I see him as an anti-hero. And the same thing with Namor, where it's a case of, like there's a guy that literally came into existence as a result of being persecuted and what happened and all these other things. And then when he does show up, oh, look at they're great. I after we've evolved and adapted, I pop out of the water and, oh, wait a second, the fire's even bigger and the big, even more like, so I'm going to stay there in this very protected state. And then again, Wakanda cracks open another thing. And it's just like, you go on the offensive. And it was like a classic, like you're either with us or you're against us. Yeah. Pick one. Yeah. I have no problem like pressing the button, so to speak, and seeing that, and then her reaching out. And I mean, again, it's still that tentative thing where you still see him going, well, okay, I dialed it back, but the needle is moved, but he's not clearly like back totally in the green, warm, fuzzy, like, but he's got some stuff that's still got to get sorted, and he's a potential threat. And
that's absolutely right. When you say, boy, after all of this, like if he could, he quenches his anger with all this like violence and death, he's going to eventually go, oh, geez, maybe I've overstepped. And also Sue Storm lives up here and maybe, she's not going to like me. Anyway, sorry, foreshadowing. If you know, you know. If you know, you know. So with all that, he has not gone through that, right? He did not have that experience. And so where do you see him going from here if we are to follow through on what we think, these emotions lead to? He has not learned that he shouldn't do it. I don't think that's not what the last lines indicate that he says.
The last lines indicate that he's still plotting and scheming. I'm just not sure to what end he's plotting and scheming.
Mm-hmm.
We're not sure if it's just lay low for a couple of years and then redouble our efforts. We don't know if it's, we're under Wakanda's thumb now, so we can strike when they least expect it, or what he has planned. But he definitely has
talk Shuri
plans
into it or something. Yeah, she'll come around.
Yeah, or again, with Shuri not being there right now, does he find that out at some point and go, "Mwah, ha 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 ha"?
Well, and it's
we're the only two places that really know what to do with vibranium.
I'll compare it to something that I'm sure was leaping to the mind of everyone watching the show, which is court-mandated substance abuse treatment. So if we're to go to this weird metaphor, I used to work in a program that was almost exclusively court-referred people who'd gotten criminal charges that had to do with drugs or alcohol or DUIs or whatever, and they came in to get counseling for addiction. And it was interesting to see how many of them, so if you look at Namor here, he did not run the course of his addiction, whatever, his unhealthy behavior. He was not, it didn't run its course. He was interrupted and now is being sort of forced into, let's say, treatment, or just basically be good now. That didn't work. Don't do it, which you have to do. You can't just let someone kill themselves with their addiction. And so there's these laws that are there. Some are very archaic. Some of them are there's a whole thing we could do. Geez, I should do an episode about. Anyway, we should do an episode about that. I haven't done one for a while about forced treatment, but so on the one hand, you get people who come into something like that and they're like, "Great, I will nod and smile. I know how to do both of those things," and eventually, I'll walk out of this building and go, "I'm done now, right? Oh, geez, all right." And that's all it means to me is get out of trouble. Which is not a bad goal, by the way, to get out of trouble. I used to tell clients that all the time. Let's start. If that's your goal, that's your goal.
It's not the highest bar that we're setting, but it's at least it's a bar, and we'll get you there.
It's a goal you can accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do have some who embrace the opportunity and say, "Hey, this happened. You know what? I am out of control. I need to change something about my life." And you just can't predict which is which when there is a brick wall that you run into that says, "Stop here. Now you're done with your addiction." Am I? I'll show you I'm done with my addiction.
The problem is Namor doesn't have that guiding hand. He's surrounded by yes men and yes women. Yeah. So it's going to be
enablers.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's the word I couldn't think of. Enablers. Yeah. He is not only is he surrounded by his staff of enablers, but I would say an entire population of enablers who adore him and are willing to go to whatever lengths that he's willing to go to. So he might be down bad for a while before any real positive growth.
Well, and it's the exact opposite of what happens, in terms of, okay, we're going to take this kid and we're going to raise him on an island so that he's grounded, this and that, whatever. You got somebody that, again, came into existence and is like how many hundreds of years old? And so he's literally like, and he's worshipped as a god because he has a lifespan that is different than everyone else. So yeah, and the fact that they even, in terms of the iconography that they used, it's Quetzalcoatl, the serpent god. So it's dude is literally worshipped as a god, functions as a god. And again, you're going to go stick me in treatment. Oh yeah, it's cute that you think so. And I even thought of it from a counseling perspective when I think of, again, folks that do work related to either, anger management, or again, especially in cases of, work in domestic, violence prevention. And it's go take the anger management course. And then they learn to parrot back all the language, do this, do that. And it's, again, depending on their range and degree of narcissism and toxicity, the worst of them actually become the ones that are best at parroting back the language. And it's like, oh, great. So now you're gaslighting the judges and the counselors. oh boy, that's not a problem.
And
so that's the kind of level that I see him operating at as well, where it's okay, yeah, dialed it back. I didn't have to die. Yeah, we've lessened the bloodshed. Now we all get to go back to our corners, lick our wounds, and, update our strategic plan.
It could work, give him time to either have true, honest introspection and heal, or just heal physically up his little winged heel and use the time to try to manipulate Shuri to say, hey, back off a little, or hey, come on, look at you. And we still don't know what evil Julia Louis-Dreyfus is going to do. And is that going to, is he banking on that pain is going to be resurrected within Shuri, and eventually she'll join me and we'll move forward with Wakanda will be our ally. There's a fixation, right? There's a fixation on what he believes is the only solution.
Oh, definitely. And she's definitely like Evil Veep is going to be the person that causes some kind of all she's missing right now is like the bad Karen haircut. She's that person, right?
I want to see an Evil Veep Disney Plus series. Let's just call it Evil Veep. That'll be great. One of the things I wanted to mention before we ran out of time is one of the greatest things we can do to change course if we are caught up in pain and anger, lashing out, is what exactly Shuri at the end, as I mentioned, the movie, she has that moment of silence. The screen fades to black. She's got her eyes closed. She's just sitting there. And what she's doing, in my opinion, is she is purposefully going ahead and accepting and embracing the sadness and the pain and just sitting in it. And the really interesting thing is that's when she meets her nephew. So there's this little message that I'm saying is there. I don't know if it's intended, that, you embrace the pain, you live in it, and then eventually something healing comes from that. And in this case, literally right now, hey, here's your nephew, right? And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, they pick a real interesting time to throw that whole wrench into the storytelling of the mini franchise that is the Black Panther movies, and I think it is 100% purposeful. I think it's not just a hey, throw it in there at a mid or end credit or whatever it is there, but throw it in the mid credit. It'll be a cool little stinger. I think that Shuri has to go through that whole process to get to where she is now, and it's the only logical point is to bring him in there at the very end to help ground her and begin her road to recovery. I unfortunately, I think a whole lot of that recovery will be off screen. I have no idea when we'll see her again, but it is good to have him there at the very end to start the process, the healing process.
Yeah, and legacy and all these other things, and the fact too that she had to, like, she was fighting the whole mourning process, and she was fighting the whole, the burning of the, you're not going to make me do this, and the fact that her mom literally has to lie to her to get her out somewhere else to do that. Just oh, wait a second, wow, the Queen's running an intervention, wow. And that it's again these things, and she's just not going to do it, and the idea that it's she literally goes off to some other place. And so that idea that sometimes we just have to leave where we're at. And, so did she do it in the place that, that ritual where she might have done it? No, but it was probably safer in some respects. And she was around folks. She was away from all of the, I guess, the pomp and ceremony. I think that's the other part too, is that it was like a metaphor for that idea of public grieving versus that personal grieving. That's actually where the healing happens, as opposed to, again, all the ceremonial stuff. And that can occur in anyone's death, right? You don't have to be a head of state. It's that idea of, the performative aspect of my uncle's funeral or whatever the thing, that is. And, oh my God, what if so-and-so doesn't show up? Oh, what if this happens? All of those things that you have to factor in that don't actually allow you to grieve because it's performative, depending on, where you fit in the family. And so there's that idea, nope, I'm going to sit on a beach. I'm going to do this. And that, it allowed her that silence. And I think that was the other part too, is that it was that idea of when you're doing this stuff, that's like when you fear silence. And that's why you get Aunt so-and-so at the funeral who is making sure that everybody's cups are filled and that blah, 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 blah. And why isn't the food out? Where are the other tray of dainties? Didn't I tell you to, because you just know that if she sits still for 2 seconds and has to think about the death of, her sibling or something, she's going to lose it. So this was that same thing where Shuri just had to keep busy. And to have that, and then to have Toussaint show up afterwards, it was almost like she had to close off one chapter to then have the next open up and to be able to see him for who he was, as opposed to had he been introduced earlier where it's like, oh, he's an extension of my brother. I'm just going to project a whole bunch of stuff on this kid and undo the fact that he was raised safely away on another island. Then she becomes toxic auntie, doing this stuff.
Wow. Well, it's obviously a very powerful message. And as you always say, Sharon, these are kind of the mythology or the legends for our time when we embrace them the right way, right? And to say there's a lot to reflect, I think, to reflect upon and to reflect back. Very well done. A movie, obviously, and also just really cool insights. And I wanted to give, first of all, each of you guys a chance to tell people where they can find you and the work that you're doing out there, so people can learn from you. It's the same way I'm sitting here learning from you guys. I'm getting these insights just from listening to you guys. So other people need to know where that good is to find Sharon and Darryl out there in the interwebs. What do you want to tell people how to find you?
Sharon, please.
Speak-up.co. Speak Up is my mental health and neurodivergence based program there's 2 different programs. One's grounded in using the MCU to using these very same stories, metaphors to help people not just survive, but thrive with their mental health and neurodivergence, and to be allies to those of us that have that lived experience. And then the Bulletproof to Stigma program, which does the same thing using the music and creative content of Bangtan Soyeodan BTS. So yeah, I'm like professional mental health neurodivergence nerd girl.
Wonderful. You can find me on Twitter doing my film critic thing at Seedalicious, SEEDALSCIOUS, and you can find all of my film reviews on paprikareviews.com.
And that's the name of the podcast feed too, right? If they're looking for that.
Yeah, Paprika Reviews is also the name of the podcast feed as well. Yeah.
Awesome.
I've been looking for a new podcast, so yeah.
There you go. Plenty of
both your podcasts.
Plenty of nonsense on there for you.
Thank you for listening to the Court and Parts Podcast Network. To listen to more Court and Parts shows, visit courtandarts.com.